Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for Big Game Bound. I'm Jack Doles. So glad you tuned in for this special playoff edition. Hey, we made it. Wasn't sure we'd actually get to this point, but the playoffs begin this weekend. 3 games on Saturday, 3 more on Sunday. And coming up on this special playoff edition of Big Game Bound, Jared Payton breaks down the Bears versus the Saints. John Telich joins us from Cleveland for the latest on the Browns' battle with COVID as they prepare for their first playoff game in 18 years. We'll also break down the games between the Titans and the Ravens, the Rams and the Seahawks, the Colts and the Bills, and the Buccaneers and the Washington football team. We'll start with the insights of Jared Payton. He joins us every week from Chicago. Jared, the Bears get into the playoffs. Their reward, a trip to New Orleans. The Saints needed overtime to beat the Bears in the regular season. Realistically, can the Bears beat the Saints?
Jack, I don't know. This is going to be a tough one for the Bears. You know, they're coming off of the loss this past Sunday against the Green Bay Packers. And, you know, when you look at the nice little winning streak they were on before that, after the 6-game losing streak, it was against teams that weren't playoff caliber teams. And so I think this is going to be a tough task for Matt Nagy and his Bears squad. But listen, anything happens once you get to the playoffs. And even if you win to get in, you back in to the playoffs, now it's your time to shine. I just think it's going to be hard for a Bears offense that was putting up 30 points before the Packers game to be able to do that and go in the shootout with Drew Brees in the Dome. So I think it's going to be tough. And you look at that Saints defense as well. They're playing some really, really good football. This Bears team is going to have to be good on all 3 phases if they want to be able to extend their playoff experience.
All right, how big is this game for Mitch Trubisky and Matt Nagy? If they lay an egg in New Orleans, could we be in for some big changes in Chicago, or did making the playoffs solidify their futures?
You know, Jack, it's crazy to think about. There's so many different stories kind of floating around about, you know, Matt Nagy's job being secure and, you know, Mitchell Trubisky coming back for another year. I don't think, if anything that was going to happen, it would have been against, you know, losing really bad to the Green Bay Packers, not getting into the playoffs, and I think things would change. As of right now, I think, you know, Trubisky's probably going to be back on a 1-year deal type for him. And then I also think Matt Nagy's not going anywhere either. I mean, he took this team from a 6-game losing streak into finding their way into the playoffs. So I think there's something to say about that and how he's corralled his guys inside that locker room to be able to get back to the postseason the second time in 3 years. So I think both guys need to be able to play well. I think for Mitchell Trubisky, this is huge for him to be able to show that not only has he gotten better over the last few weeks, but that he can win a playoff game. I mean, this is going to be huge for his resume, whether he's here in Chicago or whether he's not. And for Matt Nagy, I mean, a lot of people questioning him as head coach of the Bears. I think, you know, getting this underneath his belt and winning this game, I think will go a long way for the people in the city of Chicago.
You're a great follow on Twitter, and I feel your pain at times. Why aren't the Bears targeting Allen Robinson more often?
Well, when you were reading my tweet, it was against the Packers, and I think, you know, they were really just taking him out of the game. And good defensive coordinators will find a way to be able to do that. But then on the flip side as well, I've been around a lot of great wide receivers. Those guys that have double coverage, they're getting that bracket coverage. They find ways to be able to get it done. And, you know, Allen Robinson's been Mitchell Trubisky's safety blanket, security blanket, whatever you want to call it, all season long. He's been that since he's been in the Bears uniform. So they got to find a way to be able to get him going. I mean, 2 catches against the Packers, that's not going to cut it, especially with Darnell Mooney right now. The question marks are him playing on Sunday in New Orleans. So Allen Robinson needs to be that guy that he's been all season long, just Mr. Dependable and a guy that can get you touchdowns and also yards after catch. And hopefully, if he doesn't do that, the Bears don't have a chance of winning, I think, in New Orleans.
How happy do you suppose the Saints are not to see the Vikings on the other side of the ball?
Well, I always. I mean, I think that's a good one for them. I think looking at, you know, just the history of those 2 organizations, and we know just recently, yeah, it's going to be a different feel for them. But I think for the Saints, they have a lot to prove as well, and a lot of question marks about what they have going on. Yeah, Alvin Kamara trying to be able to clear those protocols to be able to play, and you know, Drew Brees. This is, people could say that this maybe could be his last year. You never know, going to retirement. And the Saints have been so close for them, this is the time to be able to show that they can shine. So, yeah, it might not be Minnesota, but I'll tell you what, going up against this Bears defense, that when they get hot, if they can get hot, are a tough reckoning to kind of deal with. We'll see what happens to Drew Brees, who's looked good coming back from those broken ribs.
You know, is the Saints window closing, Jarrett? I mean, how much longer can this franchise stay among the elite with Drew Brees' career winding down?
I think it's going to be tough. I think it really is. I mean, you look at what Sean Payton and Drew Brees have done, you know, in that nice little era that they've combined and had. They've done some amazing things. You know, I was there in Miami when they won that Super Bowl. When we look at Drew Brees, he is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. And I want to see, can you replicate that? Can you find a way to be able to get to the top of the mountaintop, especially right now with the Green Bay Packers team that wants to be able to win the NFC? And then you look over at the AFC, and to me, it's still the Chiefs on top. It's not going to be easy to do. Defensively right now, they're playing so well that, you know, if they can get it done on the offensive side of the ball, Michael Thomas, can he come back and contribute? They have the pieces to be able to win a championship. They just got to put it together. But just like any organization, it doesn't last that long, so you got to take advantage of every single opportunity that you have.
Jets, Jags, Chargers, Lions, Falcons, Texans are all looking for a new head coach. Jarrett, if your career path took you into coaching and you had offers from all 6, which one of those teams would you be most interested in?
Oh, man, I think people are going to laugh at me when I say this. Probably the Jags right now. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but if you're going to have the #1 pick and you get a guy like Trevor Lawrence, I think you can build around a really good quarterback. And, you know, you look at some of the other teams, it just doesn't seem so appealing. But you look at what you can build, the cap space that you have in Jacksonville, and right now with Shad Khan saying that, you know, he's calling the shots right now. If you can be a really good head coach and come in and command not only respect but also some of the decision-making abilities, and you get the #1 pick, Trevor Lawrence, why not? I mean, to me, that's a start, something that could be really, really special. And we know in the NFL, it all is about that guy that you have underneath center. Can he be a difference maker? I think Trevor Lawrence can be that in the NFL.
Well, the very first playoff game is Saturday at 1:05 with the Colts and Bills in Buffalo. Chris Hagan joins us from Indianapolis. He's been covering the Colts since the glory days of Peyton Manning. Chris, Bills finally broke through and won the AFC East. What makes you think the Colts can put an end to their season?
Well, the first thing, Jack, you have to be in it to win it. And if this were any other season, the Colts are not in the playoffs. Remember, they added that 7th team in each conference, or else the Colts would have been just the 3rd team ever to go 11-5 and not make the playoffs. So they are in. And Frank Reich is talking about, hey, we're the first ever 7 seed. Let's be the first 7 seed to go out there and win a world championship. But it is a tall task. As the 7 seed, you have to go to Buffalo and get the 2nd seeded Bills, red hot 13-3. And if you win, then you get a date in Kansas City against the defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. It'll all start in Buffalo. And as we've seen before, just getting in is what you need to do. Back in 2005, you talked about Peyton Manning. Perhaps his best Colts team was bounced from the playoffs by the 6th seed. Yeah, that was the Steelers. Remember what they did? They went and won the Super Bowl. So just get in there. It levels the playing field, and that's all the Colts want. A chip and a chair. They're still in this tournament, and it all gets going on Saturday.
Yeah, this AFC is just brutal this year. You've covered a ton of playoff games in your career. How much of an advantage is playoff experience for a quarterback? Josh Allen, 1 postseason game. Phillip Rivers has played in 11.
Well, you know, there's experience and there's some bad experiences. Phillip Rivers, 5-6 is his playoff record, 14 touchdowns, 10 interceptions in those 11 games. So not a great deal of success. But look at this. Rivers has thrown for more yards and more touchdown passes than any quarterback who has not been to the Super Bowl. So I don't know if that's a compliment, a backhanded compliment, or what. A ton of experience for Rivers. He's been to the playoffs 6 times, never taken that next step. But the difference is this year, he's got a pretty solid defense. He has some weapons around him. So this isn't, you know, Rivers wasn't brought here to be the one-man team. He was brought here to kind of be the piece to not go out there and lose you games. And I think that will be his marching orders come Saturday.
And he's got a running game that's on the upswing in the last 6 games. Jonathan Taylor averaging 123 yards a game, 7 rushing touchdowns in the last 4 games. How much better is this team since he found his groove?
Well, you know what? I had him on my fantasy team. It would have been nice if he did that early in the season. He gets hot. I'm already out of the playoff picture. You talk about maybe a rookie wall. Well, Taylor has run through that rookie wall. A franchise record, 253 yards rushing in the season finale, 30 carries. I mean, you knew he was a workhorse. He's called upon to be the featured back when Marlon Mack, remember Marlon Mack? He's probably done with the Colts, but Taylor has picked up the mantle. He kind of got in the doghouse early in the season, had some ball security issues, had a huge fumble in the Ravens game, a game-changing fumble that went the other way, may have cost them losing that game, losing the division title. But I think he worked his way out of that doghouse, and nothing gets you playing time like success, and that's what he's been doing. Very productive. The rookie will be counted upon again on Saturday.
Colts or no Colts, Chris, you'll be in Tampa to cover this Super Bowl. We covered it together last year. How much different do you expect this experience to be because of COVID?
You know, one of the great things that we did every day, Jack, and throughout the years, you go to the NFL experience, you're on the streets and you see, hey, there's a guy in a Seahawks jersey, there's a guy in a Cardinals, what's this guy doing in the Browns jersey? I don't know how much of that we'll have. I don't know how many people will be traveling. We don't know how much in and around the venue. And granted, you know, the next 3 or 4 weeks, the world could be a very different place with the vaccines and whatnot. But I'm interested to see how much of a buzz there'll still be in Tampa, because Super Bowls in Indianapolis, Dallas, Miami, Phoenix, wherever I've been, there's always been such a buzz, and I wonder if we'll still see that. Obviously, the game will be the game. The folks watching on television will have that same experience, but just being down there, and when we're down there for the whole week, that buzz leading up to it and feeling the whole, you know, NFL universe come together in one place, I'm curious and have a little bit of trepidation wondering what that'll be like, but I got a feeling there'll still be that magical feel when you narrow down the field to 2 teams playing for a world championship.
How many Super Bowls is this for you?
I think it'll be 12, 11 or 12. I went to one as a fan. I don't know if you count that because I don't know if I was been properly prepared to be on television. But yeah, let's call it my 12th Super Bowl, and this will be one that you and I both will be working. We'll have some fun, but it's always great to try to bring that feeling to all the viewers and making sure they feel like they're there, and especially in a season like this, we'll be telling a very different story.
I know last year when we were there was a big night for the Colts when the Hall of Fame announcement was made. Who are you expecting to see get that Hall call this year? Because I think you could be really busy with that.
Now, I don't know if you're a gambling man, and I don't know if you can even gamble on this, but take your 401k and put it all on Peyton Manning getting into the Hall of Fame. One of my coworkers, he's one of the electors for the Hall of Fame, and I said, you're going to have the shortest speech ever trying to convince the other vote. You're just going to stand up and say Peyton Manning, and that's going to be it. So yeah, Peyton Manning, he is in. Write it down. A lot of good competition. Now, we know Edgerrin James was voted in last year. He'll have his induction coming in, a 2-day ceremony. But Reggie Wayne, the wide receiver, the very popular fan favorite here, he came up just short last year. I talked to him. He's one of these guys. He doesn't want to, cash the check before it's signed. He doesn't know if he'll get in. He feels like he's qualified, but maybe not. Maybe doesn't go in with Peyton. That would be a great story to have those 2 teammates go in. But I think you have a couple of first ballot guys going in, and then a lot of jockeying for position. There'll be some drama leading up to game day for the Super Bowl when you think about, wow, heading to Canton, Ohio, who will it be this year? But yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about Peyton.
Well, how about this for a first-round matchup? Wild card game between NFC West foes, the LA Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks ended up winning the division, so they get home field advantage. For a preview of this matchup, we call on our Seahawks correspondent, A.J. McCord. A.J., great to have you back. Seattle closed out the regular season with 4 straight wins. How confident is this team heading into the playoffs?
They're as confident as they can be right now because they've won the last 4, like you mentioned. They've also won 6 of the last 7, and that one loss was the Giants game that everyone felt was just out of the ordinary. And so from the beginning of the season when they went 5-0, the offense had all the confidence in the world. Now the second half of the season, the defense has really hit its groove. And so they feel like at this point they've put it all together a few times and are ready to do that even more in the playoffs.
Yeah, let's talk about this defense. When we talked earlier this season on Big Game Bound, there were red flags all over the place with this Seahawks defense. But in the last 6 games, they've only given up 20 or more points one time. Is this defense now the strength of this team?
it's certainly no longer the weakness. And you talk to somebody like KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner, who were around for that Legion of Boom, and you could tell in the early parts of that season, even though they were winning games, it did not sit well with the leaders on this defensive unit, that the defense was being pointed to as the problem. And so right after the Rams game, the first one, was when the defense started having these accountability meetings. They happen before every single game, the night before, once the team is already checked into the hotel. And it's just a series of meetings where each player says out loud what his responsibility is, what he needs to do in this coverage, or if they call this play. And so KJ Wright telling me earlier this week that it just didn't sit right with him, the way that people were talking about this defense, because Seattle and defense go hand in hand. And so there's a lot of pride in this defensive unit right now of how they've been able to turn things around.
Seahawks and Rams split the regular season. What concerns Pete Carroll most about this matchup?
Well, one of the things you learn covering Pete Carroll is he doesn't have a ton of concerns. The dude is an optimist through and through. So if you ask him that question, he says, not much. I've got every confidence in the world in my team. But looking at this matchup, of course, you have to look at Aaron Donald. The good news for Seattle is that they are getting right tackle Brandon Shell back. He missed the regular season finale when he was placed on the reserve COVID-19 list because of a close contact. He's returned to the team and been able to practice as of Tuesday afternoon. So that's a huge boost for their offensive line, who is going to have to be a cohesive, strong unit to give Russell Wilson the time he needs to put some points on the board. Yeah,
AJ, the next time you run a soundbite with Pete Carroll, you can go ahead and either super him Pete Carroll, Seahawks coach, or Pete Carroll, dude. This is the 8th time Russ has led this franchise to the playoffs. They've only lost one time in the first round with him under center. As someone who's had to cover the Lions for more than 30 years now, do Seahawks fans know just how special it is with this Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson pair that you have there?
I mean, I think if you step back and look at the big picture, then of course, but as a fan and as a fan base, rationale is not the strength of any fan base. It's always rabid, intense. And so in the moment, especially at the beginning of the season when the defense was having all the struggles, there were people calling for Ken Norton's head, and they wanted him gone, even though he hadn't done anything to deserve that yet. So this fan base, I think, does know how special it is to have Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll and how critical their connection has been to the success of Seattle. But at the same time, they're like any fan base, and as soon as they can get a little spoiled with how much winning they've done in Seattle.
Why does it work so well, Wilson and Carroll? Why is this marriage so good?
There is a whole lot of trust there. And these two have been together for Russell's entire time in Seattle. And so I think it just comes down to trust. It comes down to these two guys believe in each other. They want to do something special. They want to build a legacy, and they have to a certain extent in Seattle. They're not content, either of them. I mean, Pete Carroll is in his mid-70s, and the dude, is throwing around a football at practice every single day and dancing, and Russell Wilson just will not stop until he is the greatest without any doubt. So I think their competitiveness, their drive to succeed, and their investment in people are three of the things that certainly tie those two together.
AJ, I look forward to working with you in Tampa at the Super Bowl. You'll be there even if the Seahawks aren't. As a reporter in this COVID era, what's the biggest challenge for you? And was there ever a time where you thought, no thanks, I don't feel safe?
This has been a dream of mine for as long as I've been in this industry. And so as soon as I got tapped to go to the Super Bowl, I knew that I would do everything possible to make it happen. And while it will be so different this year because of COVID and because of all the safety precautions that I will personally be taking, that I know our company is taking, and that the NFL and the Super Bowl are taking, I would not turn down the chance to be a chronicler of history. And that is what this Super Bowl is going to be, regardless of who's in it. It's going to be remembered as a Super Bowl that was able to happen during a global pandemic. And I would not trade my front row seat for the entire world. But that said, you will see me masked, screened. I'm going to be looking like a hazmat reporter for much of that week.
Saturday night from FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland, the Washington football team hosts the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The 11-5 team has to travel for this game. Let's bring in our Buccaneers correspondent, Dan Lucas. Dan, the Bucs had 4 more wins than Washington, yet they have to travel. Is it time to stop rewarding teams that win bad divisions?
It wasn't long ago the NFC West champion had a losing record and hosted a playoff game. We had that debate, but I think the Bucs are looking at it this way. This is the 1 year with the bizarre, the COVID situation and not having fans in the seats that it may not matter who's home and away in a playoff game. I know the weather's an issue in that for a team from Florida flying up to the northern city, but I just don't think they think it's that big of a deal. Now, as far as the seedings and that, what if it was even worse? What if it was 5-11 that won the NFC East and hosting a game? I think in the end, that stuff, if you're supposed to beat the team with the lesser record, it all washes out in the end. But it's going to be a little odd for sure. But the one thing the Bucs are cautious of, and the fans are aware of as well, is this is not some pushover Washington team. They're coming in here with momentum, and they're the NFC East champs. Say whatever you want. They're going to be at home, which probably matters to them for the easiness of not having to travel. But they're going to be a team that's ready to prove that they do belong in the playoffs.
Yeah, your quarterback's played a few games in the cold during the playoffs over his career. It is Brady time. Tom Brady, 30-11 in the playoffs. He's led his teams to 9 Super Bowls and won 6. How much confidence does he give the Bucs when he's leading the way right now at this time of year?
Well, I think the timing is perfect to end the year on a 4-game win streak the way they did after their bye week. They were kind of in a little bit of a skid there. And I think Tom Brady showed everyone what December is all about around here. That's really when it gets going in the NFL. You've got to play well in December just to get a chance to play well in January. And the way he has led this team and the offense has been clicking all 4 weeks, I think people are finally starting to see what this guy really has to bring to the table this time of year. When the stage gets bigger and the lights get brighter, he's just not afraid to step in that spotlight, and it's rubbed off on his teammates.
Dan, has he exceeded expectations, or does it all depend on how he plays in the postseason?
It's funny. Bruce Arians said the other day, when Brady got to the 40 touchdown passes, which is by far a Bucs franchise record, he thought he would throw 40 touchdown passes when they signed him. He also thought they'd have a full offseason, all the OTAs, a full training camp. And so, in a way, he has exceeded what they thought he could do in this different era of the NFL with teams having to battle COVID and the scheduling issues. But I just think it's more or less the mindset he's brought to this team. It's calm. They didn't win every game, obviously, but they've trailed in games. They were down 17-0 at Atlanta a few weeks ago, came back to win that game. That team last year doesn't win that game in Atlanta. So those are little things that Bucs fans are noticing the Brady effect has had on this team, which has been losing for years and years.
Yeah, the one Achilles we've seen with Brady over the years is pressure. Now, Washington can get after a quarterback. How will Tampa try and stop that pressure? How concerned are they? And how fired up are they after Chase Young's remarks?
Well, you never want to wind up on the bulletin board, but as Dabo Sweeney would tell us. But I can tell you this. It is job number one playing against not only Washington, but any Ron Rivera team. Stop the pass rush. When Ron Rivera was at Carolina, I don't care what kind of season the Panthers were having. They were a pass rushing team, gave the Bucs fits, and that has carried into Washington. And, yeah, Chase Young's a heck of a player. Montez Sweat, a young player. It's one of the best pass rushes in the league, not just the one they're going to face. And here's the thing. The Bucs against very good pass rushes this year haven't fared very well. The Rams had a big day against Brady. The Chicago Bears shut down the Bucs offense using their pass rush, and the Saints just made the Bucs protection look silly twice during the season. So, I mean, it's not like this is a surprise. They've got to protect the quarterback, and they've got to run the football as well. But you can bet they're going to do everything they can to keep Brady upright in this game, because if they do, the weapons on the offense, they know they can just unleash and maybe have a big night.
Yeah, I know Bruce Arians also talked about Alex Smith as quarterback. They're 4-1 when he starts. Now, I'm not sure there is a city that's been impacted by COVID more than Tampa. The Lightning win the Stanley Cup, but had to do it in a bubble. The Rays get to the World Series. They had to play those games in Arlington, Texas. They lost WrestleMania, right? And now here you've got the Super Bowl. How costly has this been for the city?
Well, when we lost WrestleMania last year, I said, I've had enough. I'm done. I am done with 2020. I want you to go back. Let's go back to the middle of March when this all happened. And it was just the most stunning thing that we've seen in our lifetimes in a sports sense. In Tampa, the Tampa Bay area, we were getting ready to have the IndyCar season opener, days away. The PGA Tour was getting ready to be here. The NCAA tournament, all in a 2-week span. This was getting ready to be just a fun, insane stretch of sports in the Bay Area. It was all gone, all wiped out. So that was gone. Then the hockey season paused. The Lightning fans knew their team was a potential Stanley Cup team. We didn't know if that was going to come back. All of a sudden, everything comes back. And the only thing that's missing was revenue from all this good stuff that was supposed to be coming to the Bay Area. The NCAA, the NFL, everyone has said they've taken into account what's happened here, and they realize there's been revenue lost. This Super Bowl, and we're going to get to it. We're going to get to the finish line, believe it or not. There was a while last year where we wondered if we'd play a Super Bowl. It's just not going to have that zip that a Super Bowl would have. Roger Goodell has said they're taking that into account when they award future Super Bowls. I think Tampa, from the sports standpoint, getting this Super Bowl off the ground and making it happen, and I'm sure they're going to do a good job, could be a defining moment for really the sports world. And I think it bodes well for the Bay Area that, as you mentioned, and we rattled them off, lost a ton of events that would have made 2019 really awesome.
Let's talk about the big AFC wildcard game now on Sunday, 1 o'clock on ABC and ESPN. The Titans and Baltimore Ravens, both teams finished 11-5 since the Titans won the AFC South. They get to host this game. Titans also beat the Ravens in overtime in the regular season. Corey Curtis covers the Titans. He is our Titan correspondent. He's been with us all year. Corey, Derrick Henry, 250 yards rushing against the Texans on Sunday, tops 2,000 yards. 17 rushing touchdowns. Who gets your MVP vote? Henry, Aaron Rodgers, or Patrick Mahomes?
Aaron Rodgers. I mean, look, Derrick Henry is amazing. Don't get me wrong. I mean, and he has had an incredible year. He is hugely important to the Tennessee Titans. But I would still say on the Titans, their more important player is Ryan Tannehill. And I know people are going to think I'm absolutely crazy for saying that, but it is. I mean, you've got to have the guy who can pull the trigger in those crucial situations. Who threw the ball 54 yards to A.J. Brown with 18 seconds to play? It was Ryan Tannehill. And I'll simply finish it with this, Jack. And again, I'm not against Derrick Henry. He's awesome. I've watched him all year. If you pull Aaron Rodgers off the Packers and you pull Derrick Henry off the Titans, which team suffers more losses as a result of it? It's not even close.
Yeah, the Packers are Aaron Rodgers has been amazing for the last 10 years. Jared Payton called him the greatest quarterback he's ever seen. Well, let's talk about this matchup now. How healthy are the Titans going into the playoffs? Any big concerns?
Well, I mean, they've got some guys who've been coming back. Adoree Jackson now coming back for the 4th game. Continues to need to play better in that process. Christian Fulton came back and played for the 1st game last week, so he's going to be on the field. One of the injuries to watch in this game is Roger Saffold, the Titans' left guard. Now, look, they started the season with Saffold and Taylor Lewan on the left side, and that was viewed as a massive strength for this football team. I mean, they're sinking upwards of $27 million into those 2 spots, all right? So you're looking at that as the strength of this football team. Well, Taylor Lewan is now out. His backup is now out. They're on their 3rd left tackle, David Quisenberry, and he's played reasonably well. But if you remove Roger Saffold from the situation and you have to replace him with Aaron Brewer, you know, you've taken a substantial hit in the quality of player that you've got at left guard and left tackle. Now, Saffold says he's going to play. Left the game last week, didn't return. He's played through a ton of injuries this year, so I expect to see him out there. But, Jack, How big is Calais Campbell? This guy is a mountain of a human being and a dominant football player. Is Roger Saffold healthy enough to handle Calais Campbell and Brandon Williams as well and still clear the path inside for Derrick Henry? I think that's a huge part of this game to watch.
We'll keep an eye on that. Ravens have won 5 straight. Lamar Jackson seems to have rediscovered some of that MVP form. Is he the biggest concern for the Titans?
Well, I think he has to be. And it's very interesting. I mean, look, they've won 5 in a row. They're playing great football. They've outscored their opponents by more than anybody this year. They have mopped up on some pretty terrible football teams late in the season. It's not their fault who they played. They absolutely took care of business. I think there's a couple of interesting things here. Number one, they still led the league in rushing at 191 yards per game, despite none of their running backs going for over 1,000 yards. But Lamar Jackson went for over 1,000 yards. Here's one other thing to watch in this game. When the Titans played in Baltimore earlier this season, Hollywood Brown had 0 catches on 3 targets. That allowed the Titans to shrink the field and rein in Lamar Jackson, holding him to 3.9 yards per carry. If they can rein in Hollywood Brown again, they can rein in Lamar Jackson again. So watch Hollywood Brown, see what his numbers are, because I think they're going to have a direct reflection on what Lamar Jackson's numbers are.
Second straight year these two teams meet in the playoffs. The Titans beat the Ravens last year. In that game, Ryan Tannehill threw for 88 yards. Do you expect a similar game plan, feed Henry, or will they need Tannehill to do more for this team to win this game?
I would expect him to need to do more. Now, I know he only threw for 88 yards in that game. He had 2 huge throws. After a 4th down stop, hit Khalif Raymond for about a 50-yard touchdown, and then he had that other touchdown pass to Jonnu Smith on an unbelievable catch. So he made meaningful throws in that game. But the Titans' defense stinks, Jack. It's not good. It's flat out terrible. They're going to need to score more than 28 points to probably win this football game, and because of that, they're going to need more of Ryan Tannehill. Now, his receivers are back from a year ago. They're better than a year ago with A.J. Brown and Corey Davis. They've also got Jonnu Smith, who hasn't quite been the factor that he's been earlier in the season because they need more pass protection. But I think they're capable on the outsides of creating more damage with those guys, setting up Tannehill to make more plays. You also may see Tannehill make more plays with his feet. He does have 7 rushing touchdowns this year as well.
The last game of the wild card round kicks off at 8:15 on Sunday. Browns at Steelers in Cleveland. You've got a COVID problem. The Browns will have to play this game without first-year head coach Kevin Stefanski. For the latest from Cleveland, we call on John Telich. John, Browns end an 18-year playoff drought. So much elation on Sunday, only to wake up to the news on Tuesday that this has happened. How much of a gut punch was this?
It really was one. The timing could not have been worse, Jack, because you're sitting on all the hopes and the dreams of so many Browns fans from all over the country, basically. Only 12,000 able to be at the stadium, but it was such a great moment when Baker Mayfield got that first down with a lead block from Kareem Hunt, and the stadium erupted, all 12,000 fans, everybody all over Northeast Ohio, Browns fans everywhere, so excited. But then the timing, early in the week of a playoff game, and you just know that the guys that tested positive, including, of course, the coach, they cannot be a part of the so-called festivities in Pittsburgh on Sunday night. Really tough.
All right, so what's the latest? Who else will be missing? Any more concerns that we'll have some more tests in the wrong direction in coming days?
Well, as of midweek, the Browns had good news that there were no new positive test results, no close contacts from what they were able to do throughout that protocol and that process. But there's still a long list of guys that have been on this thing. In fact, in the last 2 weeks and a day, there have been 17 players that have been on the COVID-19 list. I'm going to throw all the names at you, and a few of them may be able to play on Sunday. A few of them may not because of how close they were to that 10-day window, if you will. You're talking about Denzel Ward. He's a Pro Bowl caliber defensive back. Then Malcolm Smith, Andrew Sendejo, Kevin Johnson, Harrison Bryant. And then, of course, on Tuesday, when the news came down about Stefanski, the Browns also lost Joel Bitonio. He's a Pro Bowl guard, 3 straight years there, and they lost Kaderil Hodge, one of their better receivers and special
All right, John, I can't imagine a scenario where Stefanski doesn't win Coach of the Year. He made a huge impact on this franchise, but he can't be involved once the game starts. We saw Alabama win a big game without Nick Saban earlier this year. Can the Browns survive this game against the Steelers without Stefanski?
Well, he will be involved all the way up until kickoff. Thank God for Zoom, right, Jack? I mean, he can do all those types of things, getting the team ready. They've had so much of their preparation week in and week out this season done by the virtual method as opposed to out there on the field. Why, just the last week they had the place closed 5 times in 10 days. So he'll be involved as much as possible up to the kickoff. And then, of course, he's not able to do anything as the game starts. You have Mike Prefer, who did sub once for Mike Zimmer in Minnesota. He's the special teams coordinator for the Browns. He knows all the guys on the roster. It'll be his job on Sunday. And then Alex Van Pelt, the offensive coordinator, who does not call the plays because Stefanski does, he will be the OC. And, of course, he will be the man that will be ordering off the, what do we call it? We call it ordering off the restaurant menu, if you will.
All right, Browns also on the injury front suffered a brutal loss with Olivier Vernon out with the Achilles injury. How big of a loss is that for this defense, and especially that pass rush?
Absolutely. He really picked his game up midway through the season, Jack, up until the point where he got injured last week against the Steelers. He was playing outstanding football. 9 sacks. He had 5 in 5 games. And he really picked up the slack when Myles Garrett had to sit 2 games because of COVID. And also since Garrett came back, he really has been affected by having had COVID-19. He said at the time when he returned, it kicked his butt. And then since then, he has not been that dominant type of a factor. So Olivier was there on the outside, the other side, getting the job done. Now they have Adrian Claiborne, a longtime veteran. He will fill the shoes of Vernon. But in order to be effective on Sunday, they've got to get Myles Garrett back to the pre-COVID Myles Garrett that we knew.
John, I want to go back to last Sunday. That clock hit 0, and the Browns won the game. You touched on it a little bit, ended that long playoff drought. But how emotional was this for Browns fans who've been long suffering?
It was absolutely incredible, Jack. And the reason why it was even more significant, it was the same team that had sent them into the offseason whining and moping because they lost another season finale against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And a lot of years, Jack, it didn't just end the season, it ended the tenure of that particular coach. I think 6 or 7 times they had a coach fired after losing to the Steelers. So for fans that were there for Brian Sipes days, and that were there for Bernie and company in the 80s, and then the early 90s when Belichick was building his resume before the team moved out of town, you had that feeling back. And here's something that's really wild to note. There are kids that are going to graduate from high school this year. They really never knew anything such as what they just saw this past Sunday. A Browns team making the playoffs. It's crazy.
That's a long drought. Their reward, they get to play Big Ben and the Steelers now in the first round. What has to happen for Cleveland to win this game?
Well, they're very depleted in their defensive secondary, and so I think Big Ben and Mike Tomlin and company are going to try to take those shots down the field to those big, imposing receivers that they have like Claypool and company. So that's going to be very, very difficult for them to match up with them. But the Browns, on the other side of the football, they have Chubb and they have Hunt, and they've shown an ability to run the football. They got some of that mojo back last Sunday in the season's finale when Chubb got 108 yards and they had about 160 for the game. They've got to be able to do that this week against the defense of the Steelers. But there was a difference last Sunday. There was no T.J. Watt or Cam Hayward. They'll be wearing the black and gold this week, so it'll make it a very, very difficult proposition. But they can't get beat on those deep balls. They've got to be able to run the football with Chubb and Hunt.
We're out of time. A big thanks to our guests, Jared Payton, John Tellich, A.J. McCord, Corey Curtis, Dan Lucas, and Chris Hagan. For Spencer Whitlock and our crew here in Grand Rapids, I'm Jack Doles. Thanks for joining us on Big Game Bound.